Hi, it's Chris Watkin here, and I'm joined by Darshan Sunger, who is the MD of Three Oaks Letting Agency in Chigwell in Essex, and also Regional Executive for ARLA Propertymark in Essex. Darshan, landlords versus government, talk to me.
Landlords versus government. It certainly seems that way, doesn't it? I mean, that's how it's coming across with the raft of legislation that we're having to deal with. It does seem that we're being singled out, and it is us against the government, so to speak. And the government seems to be taking the side of the tenants. Let's face it, it's a vote winner, and it's cross-party as well.
So, I mean, let's look at the taxation issue. Do you think landlords have been battered too much?
I think they've been battered to death at the moment. I mean, with how the government has actually been treating the industry, and not necessarily single landlords, but I mean, it's non-stop. I mean, there's got to be a stop at some point, because they need to wake up and really smell the coffee and say, who are providing the housing at the moment?
What's your thoughts about Section 21 potentially going?
I think that's the worst thing that could ever happen in the industry. If you look at the 1980s, the assured tenancies, it drove landlords out, completely drove them out of the market. And we then had a massive, big shortfall of housing. And it's only because they brought the short-held tenancy agreement in 1989-88 that repealed the Housing Act 2004, because you could get possession of your property, and that's where you had landlords coming back to the industry. Is that going to happen now? Who knows?
Certainly, the short-hold tenancy in the 1988 Housing Act certainly did, was the catalyst to changing the property market. Who knows? I mean, if you'd noticed, things tend to happen in Scotland first. I mean, they had the first tenant fee ban, but now I've led to believe that they've also removed no-fault evictions.
It's just, like I said, it's an onslaught of legislation. The market, we seem to be targeted. I mean, the industry has been targeted. The Tenants Fee Act in 2019, when it came out on the 1st of June, it was as a result of it being enacted in Scotland first.
But it was pure politics, wasn't it? Philip Hammond needed something to announce and announced it. By all accounts, he didn't tell anyone.
Chris, it's lovely the way you frame it that way. Being a politician, I'm not going to get involved in politics, but I'm here because as a working practitioner, I will happily answer those questions. But one could probably assume that may be the case. But whatever is the case, whatever happens in Scotland seems to be coming down, coming down south, because yes, you're right. Recently, Scotland have announced the removal of mandatory grounds for possession, which really is not good news for the industry. Okay,
but still, at the end of the day, it depends on the judge. But if the judge is being told that if someone's in arrears by a certain month, it should be evicted, then it's not as if you can't not get rid of your tenant. If someone's not paying the rent, they're out.
One would hope that would be the case, but where did they go?
Okay, but are you surely not scaremongering here?
No, not really, because look, at the end of the day, local authorities don't have the housing stock. Full stop. So what they don't want to be doing is creating more problems for their own self by evicting, giving an easy ride for landlords to evict their tenants, and then they have to.
Of course, that's the local authority, but the local authority don't control the judges.
No, they don't. But the government is actually putting in place measures like removing mandatory grounds for possession from a landlord. They're removing those rights, and then it's up to the judge. Why would a judge put a family out on the street?
Well, he's governed. He or she's governed under what the law is. So it depends what the government do with regard to the guidance to.
So it stems back to the
coming back to the government.
The powers of corridor.
What do you think the answer is?
I wish I knew the answer to how we're going to get around this, but I certainly think the one thing I wouldn't like to see happen is that landlords start to exit the market because they can't have any control over their property. Some of them are short-term landlords, some of them are long-term landlords, some of them are just just by coincidental. They've acquired a property because their late grandmothers died or their nans died. They're accidental landlords. We're going to be driving those out as well, because they won't be putting their market on their property on the market, let's say for a short period of 2 years, 3 years, while the probate's going through.
I mean, I've certainly heard on the grapevine that there's less and less landlords buying properties than there used to be. And if you actually look at the numbers from the English Housing Survey, the growth has certainly slowed up.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, the one thing is...
But then the good news is that people are buying their own houses.
But I don't want to be painting a bleak picture for the industry, because it's a great industry to be in. I'm a working practitioner, and we want good landlords. We want people to come forward and to treat this like a proper business, because in any business you have to invest, and you have to, if you've got a house, you've got a property, good landlords will always renovate, they'll always refresh their property. We don't want bad landlords, we want good landlords, and yes, there is a nice profit to be made at the end of it.
Would it interest you or surprise you that landlords who don't use a letting agent are nearly 300% more likely to be in arrears for 2 months or more?
Yeah, because the misconception is that the landlord seems to think they know more than the tenants, and the tenants think they know more than the landlords, and then it just goes round and round, and before you know it, the rents have been withheld, and then they fall into rent arrears, and then the tenant gets advice from the Citizens Advice Bureau, and then just to even make what matters worse for the landlord, they're not always informed very well, because the government's quite clearly now saying, do a payment plan, speak to your tenant. Don't just go down the route of throwing your tenant out. Work with the tenant. And Propertymark members and agents like myself, working practitioners, get it. And that's why we follow the government's advice and work with people that find themselves in hardship, because it can happen to anybody.
Interesting times ahead. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much indeed, Chris.